Thank you very much indeed. Right, well, let's pursue some of those themes. I'm very keen to involve anybody from Florissant in the next speech. So anybody wants to point score, ask a question, they'll be very, very open to proceed. Let's start with the whole idea and turn to the private sector. Private subsidies for legal aid, it's there in the sort of conservative manifesto that we haven't read it, it's there. Are they right on principle? Lord Bach, how about tapping a bit of the old private sector and lashing it into the budget?
I'm excited by new ideas wherever they come from. I don't think we have to be high-plant. So if private sector want to get involved, yes, that's fine. But I think there is a duty on the state to make sure that citizens' human rights are kept. There's a duty to give access to justice to as many people as we can, and we should never pretend that we've ever given access to justice to a large number of people in our society.
Does the state have that obligation? Anybody?
Well, it certainly does, because...
So it's going to have to go on funding legal aid?
Very much so, because it's my ambition to keep the legal aid budget where it is. Now, whoever wins the election, I expect the permanent secretary is going to be coming in to see the Secretary of State saying that here are the cuts that your department's got to make.
It'll be 20%.
And it's going to be, I hope and pray, it will not be 20%
It will
of the
be.
legal aid budget. And
It
that
will be. 20%, what are you going to do?
we have got to bring in new money from outside. And if we don't get that new money from outside, then we're going to see a crisis, an even bigger crisis in access to justice.
So we're going to have to do it very quickly. What we're going
to have to do it very, very quickly. What we're going to do, and in fact my body leader has endorsed this, we're going to have an urgent review and a consultation on all these ideas. We can't just suddenly legislate on Robin Murray New Deal for legal aid. We can't suddenly legislate on the
By the time you have consulted, your 20% has gone up in smoke and 20% less is being spent on legal aid.
We have got to
Just
have a consultation here and we've got to have legislation very quickly.
Lord Bach, where are you going to get your 20%? I am the permanent secretary. I've come to your office. You are going to lose 20% of the legal aid budget.
I'm not going to pretend for a moment that we are going to be able to spend up as it is. It actually has gone up.
So how do you make it up?
607.
How do you make it up?
How do we make it up?
How do you bring it up? Because you said I need this level of spending.
I'll be frank. I think we're going to have to make. Cuts. I think there's no doubt about that. I'm telling you, I'm determined not to make them in at least one sector, and that's the sector of welfare. Social welfare law.
I think they will. I've got an excellent idea. Cut your fees.
I think
Cut your fees.
It's just spent so much time to make this, to earn any fees, but...
Oh, I hear it. You know what I'm saying, man. It's an amazing thing. It's like farmers, you know. You never meet a poor farmer, but they're always whinging about money.
I read a lesson in the Times recently that said masters earn less than mechanics. A system is as good as the people that operate in it. And you have to pay people a decent wage to do a skillful job.
Not more than £1 million.
No, you're talking about a dozen people or so, in a profession with 6,000.
That's 12 million.
With 6,000 practitioners.
That's 12 million.
There were 5,000 bankers who got £1 million bonus before Christmas. That's 5 billion. The government did nothing about that. They spend billions and billions and billions of
pounds. None of you have managed to get them in jail, either.
It takes time to prosecute. I do with 1.5. This government spends billions of pounds bailing out people that got us into this mess in the first place. The negative thing is that they don't have a few £100 million to spend on people that are a frontline service. We seem to be ashamed, Lord Bach seems to be ashamed that we spend more money on our legal aid system than other countries, and yet we boast about the money we spend on national health. They're both frontline services. They're both pillars. They're both pillars of the welfare state. They were both established in the 40s when the percentage of debt to GDP was far higher than it is now. We had the political will to do it then. We don't have the political will to do it now.
Well, yeah, the trouble is, political will does not overwhelm economic reality.
Well, it does. Of course it does. It has done before. It's a question of priorities. It's a question of where you want to spend the money. These aren't rules of nature. We're not dealing with forces of nature. This is not earthquake, flood, or famine. This is how you spend money that's being raised by taxation. And if you have the political will, you can do it differently.
But let's pick up on Lord Bach's point. I know you're a criminal lawyer, but I do want to get to the civil sector because there is real suffering in the civil sector. I mean, the whole question of custody. You know, where people really must be represented in the interest of the child. There is the whole question of separation, divorce, the rest of it, massively expensive in the private sector and unsubsidised in the public sector. What's going to be done about it? Roger.
Look, whatever there is no easy answer. I was a great fan of Lord Bach at Flash Burn. He had said various things, but he had this phrase, we're about as far as we can go without radical change. If there was an easy answer, it would be found.
Well, radical change, Sean, it would be doing exactly what you advocate, which you're not appearing to come back to, which would be to have stuff going on outside court, trying never to bring a case into court.
I think you should do all that, and I think we should. I think we could look at delivery systems. I don't believe that we've had the answer in relation to salary defender schemes. You might have to look at that. You can argue that the higher reaches of the bar in criminal work are slightly overpaid. The best thing to do would be find changes to the substantive procedural law which allow you to save downstream on legal aid. That's the golden goose or whatever the image is. If we can find that. And so you look, for example, in matrimonial proceedings, if you were prepared to say a bit more of the wisdom of Solomon, less of the lawyers. There's a division of assets, 1/3, 2/3, whatever. More mathematical.
But Steve, the problem surely is that actually there's a huge interest among some lawyers to get these cases into court because, my God, it's a run-up.
Well, depends. It's certainly civil law. Very often people don't take up the rights, and the state actually works against them to take up the rights in a lot of respects. But the problem is, very succinctly, you're pending these two guys, whatever destiny sits behind in 6 weeks' time, are going to be hemmed in by Article 6 and Article 8. In terms of criminal, I mean, they can cut a bit by administrative fees off the bar, the top end of the bar. That I think is a done argument. They're working through that at the moment. It's an old trade union negotiation type scenario we're in. You can't justify £1 million QCs on legal aid. It's a PR disaster, at the very least of it. But you do need to have good quality in the bar, good quality representation, or you fall foul of the Human Rights Act of the Convention. Similarly, ABP, driving costs in public law family, that's the reality of it. Whoever sits behind that desk at the Mojo when they take office on the 6th of May will face those two realities. Then there's the other Article 6, things like mental health. You're very limited in what you can do with the budget. It goes back to Roger's time, he was in the same seat as me. You look at scope and eligibility. Lord Bach did that back in 1985. And we're talking crisis here. They haven't come clean with me when I've asked them. But Lord Bach's department have got cuts of 700 million lined up over the next 3 years. I don't know where they're coming from, and I suspect they don't know where they're coming from.
Well, let's ask.
And if Jon is now saying the word on the street amongst the journalists is 20%, well, they've only got 10%, and I can't see where it will come from. It goes back to what Paul says, it'll have to be paid for.
No, you've been vindicated in the fact that everybody agrees you're going to have civil act, and you support that.
As politicians say, I really don't recognise that figure, I have to say.
It's in your own press release last week.
It's not a figure I recognise, but I've said already openly, I think there will be, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, cuts in legal aid in the course of whichever government comes into power. Where those cuts really hit, I think that is the crucial question. It's a pretty depressing thing to have to say, but I think that's the reality.
But it's pretty desperate to look around these gorgeous faces of young legal aid lawyers, and you say to yourself, what is the future for these people? Because if they don't move through this phase of being young legal aid lawyers, where are we going to be in 10 years' time?